Welcome back to Beyond the Known, everybody. Are you ready to dive into something truly fascinating with us today?
Always. Let's go.
All right. Today we're going deep on a mystery that seems like it just won't quit. Atlantis.
It really is amazing how Atlantis just keeps gripping our imaginations, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's exactly why we're all so intrigued by it. Even with everything we've learned about the ancient world, there's still this sort of this lingering possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was this civilization that was so advanced, so powerful, it vanished without a trace.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's exactly what we're going to try to unpack today. Is Atlantis an actual, real historical place? Or is it just a great story, a fantastic tale? We'll get into the origins of the story, see if there's really any evidence to support it, and then we'll jump into some of the most popular theories about where Atlantis might have been and how it might have met its end.
Sounds like a plan. And speaking of origins, we kind of have to start with the man who put Atlantis on the map. Plato.
Ah, Plato. Yeah, his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, are like the only primary sources we have for the Atlantis story. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, that everything we think we know about Atlantis, it all comes from just these two writings.
Yeah, it really shows you the power of a good story, doesn't it?
For sure.
Okay, so in Plato's account, Atlantis is this amazing, magnificent island, and it's located somewhere beyond the Pillars of Hercules.
Pillars of Hercules. Now, for those of us who aren't ancient Greek scholars, what are the Pillars of Hercules?
Oh, yeah. So that's what the ancient Greeks called the Strait of Gibraltar, which is, that narrow passage between Europe and Africa.
Ah, okay. Got it. So we're already talking about a location that puts Atlantis smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
And it gets even crazier because Plato says that Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined. I mean, think about that. That's a landmass that's bigger than most continents are today.
It's huge, like a scale that's almost impossible to even picture. And I think that's definitely part of what makes the story so captivating. And Plato really goes all out in describing this civilization. He talks about incredible architecture, technology that almost seems ahead of its time, and this just dominant military force that basically ruled the known world.
Wow. So are we talking like some ancient utopia here?
No.
Like a technologically advanced society that's living in perfect harmony?
Not exactly. And here's where things get even more interesting. Plato actually frames Atlantis as a cautionary tale. The Atlanteans, while they were super prosperous and noble in the beginning, they eventually get corrupted by their wealth and power. They got a little too big for their britches.
Ah, okay. So they thought they were hot stuff.
Exactly. And they actually end up launching a war against Athens.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't just some random natural disaster that took them out. There's a moral element to this story.
Oh, absolutely. According to Plato, the gods were so angered by the Atlanteans' hubris and aggression that they basically unleash these catastrophic earthquakes and floods, and the whole island sinks beneath the waves in a single day and night. Talk about a dramatic exit.
Yeah, very dramatic. It's such a powerful story, that's for sure. But it kind of begs the question, did any of this really happen? I mean, was there a real Atlantis? Or was Plato just using this really elaborate tale to make a philosophical point?
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's the one that's been debated for centuries. Some people totally take Plato's account as fact. They believe that there's a real Atlantis out there waiting to be found. Others think it's pure fiction, like something he totally made up to teach us about the dangers of power and greed. What do you think?
I mean, it's a good question. But I guess before we get into that, we got to look at what evidence there is, right? What's been found to support Plato's story?
Well, this is where things get tricky, because despite centuries of people searching, there's no archaeological or geological evidence that backs up the idea of a sunken continent in the Atlantic Ocean. And when you think about what we now know about plate tectonics...
Okay, wait, plate tectonics. I have to admit, I'm not totally clear on what that is or how it relates to Atlantis.
Well, to put it simply, plate tectonics is the theory that the Earth's outer layer is made up of these giant plates that are constantly moving, just very, very slowly. That's what causes earthquakes, volcanoes, and how mountains form. And the important thing here is that continents can't just vanish beneath the ocean the way Plato described.
So basically the idea of a giant continent just disappearing overnight in the middle of the Atlantic, scientifically speaking, that's pretty much impossible.
Pretty much, yeah. But, even though science throws a wrench in the idea of Atlantis existing exactly as Plato described it, people haven't stopped looking for it or coming up with other theories. In fact, because there's no evidence in the place everyone expected it, it's led to some even more interesting possibilities.
Okay, so if not in the middle of the Atlantic, where else could Atlantis be? And how do these other theories stack up against what we know from science and history?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into next. And trust me, there's no shortage of potential locations and fascinating theories to explore.
I can't wait. Let's get to it.
Yeah, so even though the mid-Atlantic theory doesn't really hold up, there are other places that people have suggested might be the real Atlantis.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, so where are we headed next on our Atlantis adventure? Give me some of these other possible locations.
Well, one of the most popular theories is that Atlantis was actually the Minoan civilization.
Oh, the Minoans. Okay.
You know, the ones who lived on the island of Crete and other islands in the Aegean Sea, like way back around 2700 to 1450 BC.
Yeah. The Minoans, right. They were famous for like their art and architecture and that mysterious writing system they had, right?
Exactly. They were so advanced for their time, a really sophisticated culture, and this theory suggests that that huge volcanic eruption that happened on the island of Thera, which we now call Santorini, well, that could have been the cataclysmic event that Plato described as the destruction of Atlantis.
Wait, hold on. The eruption of Santorini. I remember reading about that. Wasn't that like one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in history?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It happened around 1600 BC, and it basically wiped out the Minoan civilization, caused tons of destruction all over the region, so you can see why some people make the connection to Atlantis.
Yeah, definitely. It lines up with that whole idea of a powerful civilization being destroyed in a single day and night. But the dates don't quite match up with what Plato said, right?
Sure, the timeline's a little off.
Okay, so it's a compelling idea.
Mm.
But is there anything that specifically links the Minoans to Atlantis? Like hard evidence?
Not really, unfortunately. Besides that circumstantial evidence of the eruption, there's nothing that concretely connects the Minoans to the specific details in Plato's story. No Minoan records that mention Atlantis, no unique architectural features that match his descriptions, no artifacts that definitively point to a connection.
So it's another theory that had some interesting points, but ultimately doesn't prove that Atlantis was real.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend with Atlantis theories, unfortunately. But, you know, it doesn't make them any less fun to explore.
True. So what other places have people suggested could be Atlantis?
Honestly, you name it, someone has probably proposed it as the location of Atlantis at some point. Antarctica, the Azores, the coasts of Spain and Morocco, even a spot between Wales and Ireland that used to be dry land but is now underwater. There are theories for all of them.
Wow, that's wild. So what makes people think those places are connected to Atlantis?
It depends on the theory, really. Some people point to geological features, like underwater structures that look like roads or walls, and say, that's evidence. Others focus on cultural similarities between ancient civilizations in those regions and what Plato said about Atlantean culture.
So it's like a huge jigsaw puzzle, and people are trying to fit pieces from all over the world to see if they match Plato's image of Atlantis.
Exactly. And while none of these theories have really been proven, the search has led to some amazing discoveries about our past.
Yeah, I could see that. Even if you don't find Atlantis, you might find other ancient settlements or shipwrecks or artifacts that tell us more about those who lived there thousands of years ago.
Exactly. And that's part of the magic of the Atlantis myth. It makes us explore, question things, and really dig deep into our past. And even if we don't find what we're looking for, that pursuit of knowledge is always worthwhile.
It's true. Sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination, right? But, I have to admit, there's just something so captivating about the idea of finding a lost city like Atlantis. It's like a real-life Indiana Jones adventure, but instead of a golden idol, we're looking for an entire civilization.
Right. That's a big part of what keeps people coming back to the Atlantis story, even after centuries of searching and coming up empty-handed. There's that sense of wonder, the excitement of the unknown, and the hope that maybe there's more to the story than just a fable.
Yeah, it's the mystery, the potential for uncovering something amazing. It really sparks the imagination, that's for sure.
Absolutely. But even if we forget about trying to find Atlantis in a physical location, there are still some pretty big questions that go way beyond archaeology and geography.
Oh, okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of questions are we talking about?
Well, if we even just entertain the possibility that Atlantis was real, maybe not exactly as Plato described, but real in some form, it makes us think about what that would mean for how we understand history and civilization.
I see where you're going with this. If there was a civilization as advanced as Atlantis is supposed to be, that would challenge a lot of what we think we know about the ancient world, right?
Totally. Imagine if we found evidence of people having technology and knowledge that we thought only came much later in history. It would rewrite textbooks, change everything we thought we knew about how humans progressed, and maybe even how we see ourselves and our place in the grand scheme of things.
That's a pretty mind-blowing idea, like finding a missing puzzle piece that changes the whole picture.
Exactly. And even if we never find that missing piece, the Atlantis myth has already had a huge impact on our culture and how we think about the past, present, and future.
So we've got the backstory of Atlantis, the fact that there's no solid evidence for it, and all these theories about where it could have been. We've even touched on how its existence would change how we understand history. But what about its cultural impact? How has the Atlantis story shaped art, literature, and even our own worldview?
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how a story that Plato first told like thousands of years ago could still be so powerful today. But I guess when you really think about it, stories about lost civilizations and ancient mysteries, those have always captured people's imaginations.
Yeah, it's like this common thread that you see in cultures all around the world, from the stories of El Dorado to those sunken cities in the Pacific. There's something about these tales that just really speaks to us. So what is it about Atlantis specifically that keeps us coming back? Even though we don't really have any proof, what is it that keeps drawing us in?
Well, I think part of it is that sense of wonder and possibility, the idea that there might be more to history than what we know, that maybe civilizations existed long before the ones we learn about in school, and that they rose and fell without us ever knowing. It's like there's this hidden door just waiting to be opened. And if we could just find it, we might get a glimpse into a past that could change everything we thought we knew.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like finding out your favorite book is missing a whole chapter, and you're dying to know what's on those pages.
Exactly. And Atlantis, with all those descriptions of its advanced technology and powerful rulers and how they were ultimately brought down by their own pride, well, it's like a tantalizing peek into that missing chapter.
Right. But it's not just about historical curiosity, is it? I feel like there's something about Atlantis that speaks to us on a much deeper level.
I agree. I think the Atlantis myth taps into some of our deepest fears, about the rise and fall of civilizations. It's a story that warns us about the dangers of getting too ambitious, of letting power corrupt us, and about how even the most advanced societies can be incredibly fragile.
It's like Atlantis is this mirror reflecting our own anxieties about the future. We see this super advanced civilization that just crumbled into the sea, and it makes us wonder, is our own society headed down the same path?
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. The story of Atlantis doesn't give us any easy answers, but it does give us a way to think about how history repeats itself, how civilizations rise and fall, and how important it is to find a balance between progress and wisdom.
So maybe the true legacy of Atlantis isn't about finding a real city somewhere on a map, or even proving that it existed at all. Maybe it's about the story itself and how it reminds us to learn from the past and work towards a better future.
There's a lot of truth to that. The Atlantis myth, whether it's historically accurate or not, has become a powerful symbol. A symbol of lost knowledge, of potential that was never realized, and of our enduring fascination with the mysteries of the past.
And that fascination is clear when you see how many times Atlantis has popped up in art, literature, and pop culture. I mean, from classic books like Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to more recent films like Disney's Atlantis. The Lost Empire, this legendary city, continues to capture our imagination and inspire creative expression.
It really shows you the power of a good story, doesn't it? Even without any hard evidence, the idea of Atlantis has sparked so many different creative interpretations, and each one reflects the hopes and fears and values of the time it was created.
It's almost like Atlantis itself is a chameleon, changing its shape and meaning as it gets passed down through generations.
Exactly. And every new interpretation adds another layer to the myth. It helps us understand not just Atlantis, but also ourselves and our own relationship to history, to the unknown, and to the power of storytelling.
It's just incredible how one story that was first told thousands of years ago can still inspire so many different interpretations and connect with people across cultures and time periods.
It speaks volumes about the power of myth. And while the search for a real Atlantis might continue, maybe the most valuable discoveries are the ones we make within ourselves. The insights we gain from exploring the legacy of this legendary lost city, those are the things that truly matter.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we leave you to continue exploring the mysteries and meanings of Atlantis on your own. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Beyond the Known. Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and never stop exploring the wonders of our world and beyond.